Hey everyone, welcome back to this podcast, Autoimmune Life and Me, where we talk about living with autoimmune disease. If that's you or somebody that you love, hello. If you're brand new here, my name's Louise. Welcome to this podcast. There will also be a copy now going onto a YouTube channel. I am considering whether we do that as a video podcast, because that seems to be a new thing now, doesn't it, that people are doing. So hello, welcome to you. I hope you will find some use in this podcast. But basically today it's a very casual day. I am going to have a cup of tea, and I've just taken a little break from my video editing work that I'm doing today, and I thought, you know what, I'd love to talk to you guys, and I really want to try and do this podcast once a week, because every time I release one, the numbers go up, and that makes me really happy. So today, as you've seen from the title, we're going to talk about mental health. And I'm sorry that I need to do this, but a little disclaimer. So I'm not registered or qualified in any way as a counsellor. I'm unable to give any advice regarding mental health. But I'm just going to speak about what I think, what my thoughts and feelings are around this topic. And if you are somebody that feels that you need some sort of mental health counselling, or you know exactly what I'm saying, then reach out to the right people, the qualified people. So this podcast is not designed in any way at all medical advice or mindset advice or anything like that. It's just literally my thoughts and feelings. There are occasions I can talk to you as a qualified registered nutritionist, which is what I am, and I am qualified to give you dietary advice and things that will improve your health in that respect. So I might be throwing a little bit of that in. None of this is scripted. It's not often scripted. I'll occasionally write a few notes, but I've literally just sat here. I've got, funnily enough, my mug with the periodic table of elements on it, which is very old now. I was bought that actually when I started my first undergraduate degree, which was about, not about, I can tell you exactly, it was 11 years ago. 11 years ago this year. So yeah, when I did my science degree, like a smarty pants, I'd love to believe. No, but it was flipping hard. So yeah, just sitting having a cup of tea, wanted to chat with you as if you are besties with me. Now, some of you have reached out recently, and I love that. Thank you. I will be looking for a sponsor for this podcast. I'll probably talk about that a little bit in here, because I do feel as though, maybe because it's faceless on here, but I can feel like I can be a little bit more raw and vulnerable and real. And this is the only place that I tend to talk in depth about the autoimmunity that I'm living with. So just touch on it really quickly. I've got Crohn's disease and ankylosing spondylitis. I've had various other bits and bobs. I'm a celiac disease. I'm not a celiac disease. I have celiac disease. And before I went through a very short, weird menopause, I did have endometriosis, and I now have adenomyosis. Actually need to look up to see if that is an autoimmunity or not, but anyway, there's so many different autoimmune illnesses, and it's very difficult to cover every single one in one podcast. But today I just wanted to touch on mental health, and it's because I think we give ourselves a really hard time. We tend to be the sort of people that look at things as in, I should know better than this, or I should be able to do better than this, or I need to pull myself together. So I wanted to touch on that, and I'm feeling slightly like that myself today. Not really particularly down. I just woke up a bit grumpy with the mind chatter that goes on of like, oh, people won't like me because I'm always flaking out on them, or people won't want to talk to me because I'm a bit grumpy today, or whatever the thing is. So let's just have a quick chat about that together, shall we? Are you ready? Have you got your cup of tea? So there's every chance that I will be releasing a book about how people feel when they're diagnosed, and gather some stories together, because I think it's a very poignant time in life when you're told you've got something you're going to live with that's not going to go away completely for the rest of your life. But I am a firm believer that with certain autoimmune illnesses like inflammatory bowel disease, and this is an area I was researching for my PhD, probably talk about that in a different podcast. But when, sorry, I've lost my train of thought there. I do believe you can very much influence the symptoms of inflammatory bowel disease with diet and lifestyle factors. So if you're querying that, which to be fair, we are allowed to talk about things like that now. We didn't used to be. When I first started my sort of study in this area, we was told, don't let people feel like you're blaming them for their illness. But take celiac disease, for example. If you're not aware what that is, it sits on the fence. Is it an autoimmunity or not? It's not an allergy per se, but it's along those sorts of lines. But celiac disease is, I think it is an autoimmunity. It's just a confusion within the body of you eat gluten and your body's like, attack it, quick, get it out. It's not something that we want in our body. And a lot of people can deal with it. A lot of us can't anyway, intolerance wise or celiac disease, whatever, because we weren't designed to eat that way. If you think back when we're caveman times, and I know this is a massive subject, you've got endomorphs, ectomorphs, you name it, you've got it. But that was a time when, we didn't have agriculture. Agriculture came so recently in our years, like 10,000 years ago, is it something? That we're not really designed and adapted to deal with grains, and grains are a tricky thing on the body. But a celiac is different. So if I was to carry on eating gluten everywhere that I went, then what would happen to my gut health? What would happen to my body? That's an actual question to you. What would happen? And I can answer it myself because you can't answer me back here and now. That's funny. So I would have symptoms. I would feel naff, and it would be because I'd eaten gluten. Now, if I didn't know that I was eating gluten, then obviously you can't really say, oh, that's your fault then. But if I knew I was eating it and wanted to carry on regardless, and I have symptoms, then I am to blame. Okay? That's an elephant in the room. Sometimes you can be to blame. And that's not just relating to autoimmunity, that's in relation to anything, I mean, look at Christmas Day. If you're somebody that celebrates Christmas and you eat a load of junk over Christmas, and then you feel like, oh my God, I feel awful. Oh, my stomach's not right. Oh, I need to go sleep. That's because of what you've done to your body. So it happens. It's part of life. There's no major shame in it. It just is, is what it is. But something that I think is... It's emerging, but it's more difficult, I think, to just black and white this topic, is the mental health side of things. So can this be something that we attain to autoimmunity? Yes, I believe it can, because a lot of us that have got problems with autoimmune illness will have a gut issue. Now, we know this thing about, you heard about it, there's a cat brain in your gut. There's cells in your gut that are similar shape, size, function to a cat brain. Apparently, I've not looked at the papers on this, but it's common knowledge that that's what they say. So there's a definite gut-brain connection, and if your gut isn't right, which so often isn't, because that's part of a lot of autoimmunity. And I'm not talking about inflammatory bowel disease and Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. I know loads of you listen and watch YouTube that have got IBD, because that is what I tend to talk about quite a lot. But other things aside of that, there's very often, in fact, just general people, anybody generally doesn't have the perfect gut. We can have leaky gut. And when there's things that go into your bloodstream that shouldn't be, it's going to reach the brain and it's going to affect the brain. So I'm just going to touch on that slightly a little bit more on the science bit, because it's important that we understand that before we do the whole empathizing with each other thing about how we're feeling mentally. So your anatomy of the body between the mouth and the anus. So all of that area, that's the digestive tract, okay? That's not new news, but what might be new to you is that it's kind of the outside of the body. And you're like, well, no, it's not, because I eat something that goes in my stomach and it goes in my gut and then it goes into my colon and then it comes out of my anus and down the toilet. But imagine that it's a straw, okay? Because it is. So through the middle of a straw, so you run some water through the middle of that, and for argument's sake, the water only stays in the hole. It doesn't go on the outside of the straw as you're doing it from the tap. So would you consider that that's inside the straw, or is the inside of the straw the actual material that makes the circle that is the straw? So that's what I mean by that. So my biologist in my undergraduate explained that this hole we have through the centre of our body is not inside our body. So if you think about your heart, that's inside. You can't put a tube through, and well, you can in the veins. Okay, that's a really really terrible example. I hope you're laughing with me and not at me, but you know what I'm saying. So by us having a leaky gut, there's all these things that will be in our food now. We know about the microplastics. We know about carrageenan, all these like, oh, I can't have dairy, so let me have a nut milk. There's all these stabilizers and emulsifiers in there that are just not good for the body, and we don't want them inside. And as soon as we absorb that, then we've got a problem, because it will reach the brain. And so by mental health, I'm talking about a general mood that is caused by something linked to autoimmunity. I don't just mean you're feeling low because you got the illness. I mean, on a biochemistry level, this happens. And I think that causes these moods that you can't attain to anything. So you can't say, I lost my job, so therefore I'm feeling low. That's life stuff. That's not necessarily autoimmune stuff. And I'm literally talking like on the fly here, because it's just how I sort of interpret things better. I think sometimes it's just saying it out loud. And when I watch it back, I think, oh God, you really made a lot of sense there, girl. So yeah, well done, me. So aside of obviously the gut-brain connection and the gut-brain axis that we are going to struggle with, then there's the other side that we're going to talk about, which is feeling blue because we feel like we've got a bit of a shitty end of the stick in life. It's not ideal. It's not where we want to be. I'm sitting here, it's a lovely day outside today. We've got sunshine now. Finally, it looks like spring has sprung in the United Kingdom. Brilliant. How is it in Canada, guys? I know there's a lot of you listen from Canada. But I'm sitting here with a hot water bottle on my back today. And it's just a habitual thing that I now do that I feel really helps me with pain and stiffness for my ankylosing spondylitis. But also, I've taken steps, and I'm really blessed actually that I'm in a position to spend a lot more time with the yoga side of things that I need to do to slow the progression of this illness. And, I'm just trying to really, really be on it with my health. Now, downside to that is, so you think a lot, don't you, when you've got this illness, and you spiral and you think about the future. I mean, some of the, say like MS, multiple sclerosis, that's an autoimmune illness that is, you're gonna be sad because the future holds what it holds. Now, I am a little bit dismissive of my illness sometimes, because I think I've got this, I'm in control of this. And I think sometimes medically that's not always the case, even though this podcast started off talking about diet, being autoimmune diet and me. Because there is an autoimmune protocol diet you can follow. So I think there's a lot of it that is in your control and my control, and there's a lot that we can do. However, there's going to be those days when you think, well, why me? Why have I got this? That victim mentality will creep in. It's bound to creep in. I don't say that that's a bad thing, that you feel like that, or that I feel like that, even though I've just labelled it up as a victim mentality, which sounds like a real negative notion. You are going to feel sad sometimes. So every human does, yeah. It's just life. It's just part of being human. But there will be times when you feel that it's not fair. Why was you given that? Why was you dealt that? And you'll look for someone to blame. I think this is okay to share this here. This feels like a safe space to share. When I was a baby and I was screaming apparently quite a lot, the big story here. My mum decided I would be hungry, so decided to start weaning me onto baby rice at 3 days old. So I have gone through a moment of, have I got Crohn's disease because of what my mum did? And I've had a big thought process with myself around that, and done a full circle of, even if it is because of that, let's say it is, for the argument of this conversation, she wouldn't have purposely done the wrong thing hoping it would give me Crohn's disease. So I've kind of had to do a little bit of work on that and around like, okay. But it could potentially be a reason. And I think we look for reasons. We look for a way to accept what's happened to us. And to have no reason does mess with your mental health. To not have a thing to say, yeah, okay, so this happened to me because of that and that. And I can trace the steps back. I mean, we do this with all walks of life, don't we? You know, if a friendship comes to an end, you think, oh, God, if I hadn't let them down for such and such, or if I hadn't said this. But it might not be a you problem. It might be a them problem. And, you know, trust me, I've had my share of those. And it leaves me quite sad, but it is what it is. And I think sometimes accepting some of these things with a little bit of grace, if you can really, really help you mentally. It can help your illness. Say, for example, I wanted to touch on this today. If you can't work, if you're not well enough to work, or if, say, like, obviously I'm self-employed, and that is a beauty in itself, because it means I can, when my back isn't playing ball in the morning, sometimes it takes a fair few hours to get going, and therefore I haven't got to commute to London and be late because I can't move, or all these things. You know, there's beauty in it there somewhere. There's I could look at it and go, oh, I can't get a job because of this. Or I could think, okay, I'm very fortunate. I'm able to work on my own terms, on my own grounds, and that also gives me time to work on my yoga as I need to. And, you know, so there's definitely ways of looking at it and turning things around. But I would like you to take away from this podcast today, and we're not ending, I would like you to take away that cut yourself a little bit of slack, because to beat yourself up for feeling low is not helpful. It's not going to help. And I speak from experience, and also from my clients that I've worked with previously on health related issues. We start off talking about diet, and then we end up with a whole load of other things. And if you're in that negative mindset already, add into that by thinking what a terrible person you are because you can't get a grip of things, isn't gonna help. Cut yourself a bit of slack, ride the wave. It's not gonna last forever. You know, I'm going to use this expression that a very good friend of mine gave me. The only way through it is through it. You know, you go through these bad days. You might wake up grumpy or whatever. And the people that really love you, truly love you, and there might not be a lot of them. There might not be a lot of them. People have got short fuses when it comes to things, and it's not bloody fair. They shouldn't have. They should be forgiving and loving, because I bet your bottom dollar you are. I bet you would be there for them. But the people that really love you are going to forgive you having a bit of a grumpy day because you're in pain, or because you're tired, or you're fatigued, or whatever those things are. So it's part of life anyway. But throw autoimmunity in the mix, it's going to happen. You're going to have those days where you can't snap out of things. And as I said at the beginning, if you're someone that really feels that, you know, you just can't deal with life, then please do get some help. Please do reach out to the right people. But I just think, just cut yourself some slack, you know? Because it isn't very fair. And life isn't very fair. Very often, the odds are stacked in your favour. Okay? Especially the majority of us listening to podcasts, we've got internet security, we've got money, we've probably got a home. And that is such a blessed thing. So sometimes I think strip it right back. Do your gratitudes. This is something that helps me every single day. I write down my gratitudes, and while you're busy thinking about something that you're really thankful for, it's very difficult to think about something at exactly the same time that is crappy. So do your gratitudes, and it can be so simple. You know, I was just thinking as I was making this cup of tea that I've got here in my periodic table cup about my friend Sharon. And Sharon died. And she was absolutely my best friend. She was the most wonderful, loving, smiley human being that I ever could have wished to have had in my life. And I miss her terribly. She's irreplaceable. She was my going out friend, and I haven't managed to find that other going out friend. And when she was diagnosed, she died of breast cancer. And when she was diagnosed, she was very chilled out about it, to the point that her family were actually surprised when I was the nominated person to phone them up from the hospice to say, you need to let them know that she's not got much longer. And they were surprised. I was like, I thought she was getting better. She just sailed through her illness with no attachment to it. And that wasn't her trying to manifest it away. That was just her just letting it be. And I actually really love that track, Let It Be by the Beatles. Just listen to the words of that sometimes. I think there's a lot to be said by just let it be. It is what it is. Now, she said to me quietly, because, you know, she was young. This was 5 years ago now, so she was 48. And she said to me, you know what, Lou, I think I've had my life. Just as nonchalantly as I've just said it there. And I thought, what a brave lady she is. And she just took it all with a smile and just sailed her way off into the next life. And, you know, amazing. Not many of us are going to be like that. Not many of us can do that. And I get that, and I understand that. And if you're somebody that's going through a particular hard time with your illness, then you do have all my love. I'm just sending that out there. Do any of you watch Mel Robbins? So Mel Robbins finishes her podcast by saying, in case nobody told you today, I love you, and I've got faith in you, and I'm proud of you. And even though she works very hard on making it so that it's you, the actual listener, you know that she doesn't actually know who you are. And you could think the same about me saying that on this podcast, that I don't know individually, like you right there now listening, thinking, okay, she doesn't really know like who I am, but she's obviously clearly talking to me. So if your name is Dave or Michelle or whatever, I bet there's a Dave and a Michelle listening as well. Then I'm saying to you individually, I'm creating these podcasts because I genuinely care. I'm making myself feel emotional now. I don't think I've ever cried on this podcast. I cry quite a lot. Because obviously a lot comes up for me as well in this, you know. I'm walking with you. We're hand in hand. We're walking together on this, and it is painful, but also it's a blessing, you know. We're blessed that we've had a diagnosis. A lot of people are so poorly and they don't even know why. You know, you've got to try and cling on to the good bits. We've got a diagnosis. There's often something we can do about it to make life a little bit more pleasurable. And you've got to just accept that you're going to have those mental health days where it's not great. And I care about you, particularly Dave or Michelle, or please fill in the blank of your name. And that's why I do this. I said right at the beginning, I'm looking for a sponsor. But it's growing now, this podcast, and it's gaining some traction, and I'm hoping that it will be something that is going to progress in a sort of work kind of fashion way. It'll always be heartfelt, so please don't misunderstand what I'm saying there, but like all of us, you know, autoimmunity waits for no one. We've got bills to pay. We still need to pay our bills. And, you know the story by now, I think. I'm working really hard on my business, on making this work for me so that I can put my health as number one. And I love that. But it comes with its set of challenges and worries of like, oh my God, what if I can't support my family anymore? I'm trying very hard to do that. Trying very hard to support them. And there's a little bit of help here for us, not a lot. And my gastroenterologist is absolutely dreadful. She's dreadful. She keeps sending me all these appointments and then cancelling them. And I'm just like, what is going on? And I see her every 6 months minimum. And on the last clinic letter that she wrote back to my GP, first time I've seen Louise for several years. No, it isn't. And it's so frustrating when, like, you're listening to this podcast, right? Because you've got knowledge around your illness. I know that for a fact. So she says to me, so how's your bowels? And I say, yeah, no, not great, you know, but when they're not great, I'll make myself some peppermint tea and drink that. That really helps. She detailed that in the letter back to the doctor. And I felt it was laughing at me. That's how it felt. She likes to drink peppermint tea when she's got trapped wind. It's how she's written it. And I just thought, okay, you're absolutely taking the mick. If you don't know what that phrase means, well, you can fill in the blank. You know what I'm saying. So, you know, we've got these blessings of the most dreadful gastroenterologist that doesn't agree about diet and lifestyle and will just write you a prescription that's going to cost you a load of money and whatever. But, you know, here we are with our blessings, and we have to try and focus on those, especially on those days when we feel quite low. And as, you know, I'm danger of repeating myself, but we as human beings will have those days. And certainly us as autoimmune human beings will definitely have those days. And there's nothing wrong with you for feeling like that at all. But please try not to just wallow in it. It's much easier if you can do the let it be thing, you know. This is how it is. This is how I feel. I've got to accept it. And, you know, and think of Sharon. God rest her soul, my lovely friend that is irreplaceable. She's just, I don't know, maybe I've got to hanging on to people as I've got older. I used to think, oh, you know, and you'd find a new friend and you'd give the odd person, you know, it's like relationships, isn't it? Do you just move on, find someone new? Or is that person a bit irreplaceable, really? I don't know. But anyway, I hope in some way this might have resonated with you and that you have found it somewhat useful, or maybe just, I don't know, a little bit nurturing, maybe a little bit therapeutic for yourself. I think I'd really like to hear from you. What would you like me to cover? We can go through the autoimmune protocol perhaps on the next one. Maybe we can go through some I'm not really a sports nutritionist, but we could go through some sort of exercisey kind of regimes, just in more of a morale and a motivation kind of way, rather than this is the exercise you should do, because I couldn't possibly cover all of those. And certainly with all the different autoimmune illnesses, we can't. I do think I will do pretty soon an autoimmune podcast, which is going to be specifically for inflammatory bowel disease. How to live your best life if you possibly can with inflammatory bowel disease. Another one regarding ankylosing spondylitis, we'll touch on that, because that also can pertain to quite a lot of other things that are related to that, which is psoriatic arthritis and rheumatoid arthritis and any sort of inflammatory arthritis that will come under that umbrella. So we've got a lot to cover. So therefore, please do save this podcast and make sure that you come back. I'd love you to review it as well. I suggest you give it 5 stars, because that's going to really show the people on, I don't know where you listen to it, Spotify, Audible, all of those platforms, that actually this is a pretty cool podcast and people should listen to it, and it will help them to push it out. So you can find me in all the platforms. Look down there in the show notes. Reach out to me. Let me know you've listened. Let me know how you're feeling today. I would really, really love to hear from all of you, just for literally that reason. And if you've got suggestions as to what you'd like to hear, I'd love to hear it. Of course, you can find me on all the other places, you know, the YouTube and the Instagram. Come and find me. TikTok's taken off quite well for me at the moment, and really weirdly, it seems to have morphed into talking about travel. It happened quite by accident, but that's probably another story for another time. I am going to, I'm not writing at the moment actually. I've put my writer head to one side for the minute. I do have another small health challenge at the moment going on, and I'm not giving that any energy. So I'm just doing lots of meditation at the moment, and I'm compartmentalizing my tasks that I have to do in life, because I don't want to be overwhelmed and stressed and give my cells any reason to play up. So yeah, I'm not writing, but I am editing some videos, and I've got quite a lot of networking events coming up, which is both scary and exciting. And when I talk about sort of mental health, the thought of going to these events and being in pain, it happened to me last week actually. I was in London, an incredible area of London. I'm not going to go into detail for obvious reasons, security and their private business, but it was a work thing, and I thought I'd better try and dress up, so I put on a pair of boots, and that plays up my, you know, if you get a bunion, well, I haven't got bunions, but that area of the foot, these boots play that up, and they're not high boots. I can't walk in heels anymore, which, oh my God, even that statement makes me sad. But there we are. So, yeah. And I was standing in the room, and I was thinking, I'm in pain. I need to sit down. There was no chairs. And my anxieties started to spiral, and I was just like, oh. So yeah, so doing the things that I'm doing at my desk at a time when I feel better, and then I can work harder and focus and all the rest of it, is feeling really, really great. It's feeling really good. I just need to crank everything up that little bit more, so that, you know, so that we're good, so I can support my family and all the rest of it. And if you hear me with that, if you're thinking, oh, what am I going to do? Got this autoimmunity, and, you know, then fist bump to us. But anyway, here and now, it's time for me to go and do a little bit more of that. And I send you all my love, Dave, Michelle, and you. And I hope you're good. I hope you're feeling good. So we will talk about autoimmune protocol, so make sure you come back for that. It's a strict old diet, but you know what? You're going to feel better for it. Trust me. Trust me on that. She says, but I could really do with a cottage pie tonight for my dinner. Maybe I'll do that and take the potato off the top. Yeah. All right, take care, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. And don't forget that review, 5 stars, please. Or you can, if it's on YouTube, just give it a little thumbs up. All right, then. I'll see you in the next one.